is really not meditation, you know, it's inner work. The byproduct of it is a quiet mind, quiet emotions, opening, balance inside. But the purpose is to connect with spirit, to connect with a higher energy in the universe, and to allow that energy to begin to guide one's life. So, you know, meditation is one thing, but this is really a much deeper form of inner work. And please try and sit still. Hello? Hello? Try and sit still, please. It's really important. It's a much deeper form of inner work, you know, and it's really dependent upon one's need to do it. If the need is real, then this thing will work for you very quickly. If it's not real, you know, it gets in the way of allowing this higher force of energy to truly nurture you inside and help you to open, you know, and, you know, really get rid of all of the kind of stuff that runs rampant, all that mind stuff and emotional stuff, sexual stuff, all of that stuff that when used in a healthy way inside, it not only gives us a spiritual life, but it helps us to live here on a higher level of our own humanity. So please try and work deeply inside. We'll have a meditation class. And after the class, if anyone has any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them. And if anyone has a question, I'd be happy to try and answer. Please try and sit still. You know, I mean, there's still a class going on. Another 10 minutes. Does anyone have a question I would like to ask?
Stuart, could you talk about forgiveness, please?
Yes, you know, I talk about this all the time. It's just a basic element of just literally this construction of our humanity. Without forgiveness, we never move on. We live with a pain in the center of our hearts. We're angry at people. And yeah, people have done really stupid things to all of us, and, you know, things that have hurt, and we've all been through difficult situations. But it's essential that we get strong enough to say, I forgive them. I forgive them. They have no idea what they were doing when they did what they did. And we don't do it for them. We don't have to ever see them again. But when this forgiveness is real inside us, we can let go of that pain. We can let go of that situation. We can move on in our lives. And this is really an essential ingredient in, certainly in the development of a spiritual life. If we're stuck, we can't move, if we're surrounded by all this anger and resentment of what people, you know, we never move on. We never are free of something that happened to us in the past, and something which truly doesn't exist anymore in our lives. So, you know, throughout history, you know, I mean, they've always talked about having to forgive. I mean, the greatest of it all is, you know, and, you know, God, I'm not a Christian, but Christ on the cross, forgive them, they know not what they do. Just nailed to a cross. I don't think there's ever been a more profound statement made in the history of the world. And if we just listen to that kind of teaching and allow it to become permanent inside us, it truly gives us the freedom to move on in our lives. It gives us the freedom to open and allow higher energy. You know, because if you combine forgiveness with compassion, with love, with happiness, I mean, when you attain these things inside yourself, you've attained the highest state of what it means to be a human being living in this world. All of it works together, and all of it is the end product of transforming the anger, the neurosis, the anxiety, the unhappiness in ourselves into forgiveness, into gratitude, into love, you know, not as a one-time state, but as a permanent reality inside us. And we attain literally, I mean, we literally free ourselves of karma if we do this. We really do, you know, because happy people are enlightened people. And how can anyone be happy if they're walking around with this grudge in their heart, with this anger in their heart, with this inability to forgive somebody that did something to them? You know, God knows, it could be 30, 40 years ago, it could be 30 lifetimes ago. So I think forgiveness is an important ingredient in inner growth. Please try and sit up and do them. Flora, you can't do the meditation with your arms crossed. I mean, when I had a meditation group, you know, live people, you know, people that were in the room, nobody ever moved. You know, people really learned that, and they sat still for 40 minutes, 45 minutes. It's really important to understand. I say this almost in every class. If you fidget and move and cross your arms, it not only disrupts the class for you, but it disrupts the class for everybody sitting here. So please try and sit still, have that discipline. I mean, look, I have 2 rules, you know, no dope and sit still. You know, so many rules I have that, you know, for studying this meditation here. You know, no drugs and sit still. And I don't ask, you know, I don't care who you vote for, what you eat, your sex lives, your this, your that. I'm really not interested in that stuff, you know? But please just sit still and don't smoke any marijuana or, you know, LSD or ayahuasca or all this stuff that people do that they think is truly a spiritual life. Does anyone else have a question?
Stuart?
Yes.
I'm sorry because I couldn't sit so still because when you talk about forgiveness, I had energies, they become in my body, in my arms. And my question is, does it help to say just, I forgive, they didn't know what they are doing? Or is it to have patience, like you said often, to be with you and just to work inside? Because it's not so easy.
Or there are people talking behind you and stuff. It's really difficult.
Yeah.
Listen, look, forgiveness is a state of being. When you work enough in yourself and build a system that's strong enough, it just automatically happens. You know, you just automatically are capable of forgiving people for doing all the stupid things they do in life. And I think it's a part of the evolution of your inner light. This just happens. Like joy happens, like love happens, like all of these things that are so essential for us to live here like human beings, they just manifest because we are ready to live that way. We have built a system inside ourselves that enables us to do this. And we forgive, you know, I mean, to live with other people means you got to forgive all the time, because people are always doing things that are, you know, that against the grain. And we have to learn how to do that. Otherwise, relationships would never survive. And most relationships are very difficult because people don't do that. They know better than the other person, and they're trying to tell the other person how to live, and it doesn't work. You understand? We have to get big enough to allow people to live and be themselves around us and love them anyway, no matter what they do. So forgiveness is just part of your evolution inside. It's not some concept that you get in your brain and you can do. As you grow organically, one day it just happens. one day you live with your heart open. You're no longer intimidated by life, threatened by life. You know, it's the same way. You know, when the Kundalini gets activated, we have the ability to live in the world without being sucked dry by the world. It all is part of the evolution of consciousness that takes place inside a human being.
Thank you.
And just have patience, because it comes, this. I can tell you honestly, there's nobody sitting in this class now that was in worse condition than me when I was 25 years old. I can tell you that. All of you think you have problems. I can promise you, my condition was, I was really messed up as a kid. I was very gifted spiritually, but I had no capacity to do any of the things I'm talking about today. It just came through working and opening and working, building a chakra system that enabled that state of being to come. So have patience. I really mean it. Have patience. It comes, you know, all of these different levels of inner growth become possible because we have done the work and we have patience and we allow ourselves to blossom. We allow that lotus flower in our heart to open and stay open. Does anyone else have a question they would like to ask?
I have a question. Could you, Stuart, say something about Kalu Rinpoche? Why Kalu Rinpoche?
I don't understand.
Kalu Rinpoche.
Kalu Rinpoche.
It's 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
Oh.
Why he is important for you?
You know, I talk about him a lot in some of my books. Maybe you should read my books. You can really find out. There's one called The Lotus Flower in Muddy Water, where I have a whole section on my meeting with Kalu Rinpoche. Look, Kalu Rinpoche gave me a complete Tibetan Buddhist education in 3 days. I mean, it was probably one of the most extraordinary stories of my life. I was in India with a student, and this is back in probably 1977, 78. And we went to Darjeeling, and I met some Tibetan lamas there, and I asked them if they could take us to every monastery in Darjeeling. I would like to meet the Rinpoches and learn from them. So we did a tour of every monastery, a place called Goom, and another, I don't know, there's a bunch of them. And I went from Rinpoche to Rinpoche, and I couldn't feel any connection with any of them. And then he said, no, then he said to me, we'll go to Sanada, which was a monastery, maybe 10 kilometers from Darjeeling. So we took a bus there, we walked up to the monastery, and there must have been 300 lamas sitting in the courtyard there. And all with their rosaries, the Om Mani, the malas, the Om Mani Padme Hum, and prayer wheels, and doing all these ritual incantations, you know. And one of them came up to us, and I said, can we speak with Rinpoche? He said to me, oh, well, Rinpoche is very sick. He's not seeing anybody. I said, look, we've come like 9,000 miles. We did. I was living in Texas at the time. I said, is it possible for us to see him just for, 10 minutes, 5 minutes? So what happened was he went in and he came back with this really surprised expression on his face. And he said, Rinpoche said he will see you. So we went into this chamber where Rinpoche was lying in his bed, literally with a blanket up to his neck. And he looked like he was dying, he looked like he was very, very sick. And I sat down on the floor. I gave him a silk scarf, a white silk scarf, which is a term of humility to give to a Rinpoche when you meet them. And I said to him, can you just talk for 5 minutes about Tibetan Buddhism? So he went on for an hour talking about Tibetan Buddhism. And then I said to him, Rinpoche, can we come back tomorrow? And he said, yes, please. So we went out, spent the day in Darjeeling and doing whatever else we had to do. And then came back the next day, bought some more silk scarves, came back the next day, gave him this silk. And the next day he's sitting on his bed in his teaching, in his robes. And I sit cross-legged on it. And I said, Rinpoche, can you talk about Tibetan Buddhism? So again, he went on for an hour. And then I said to him, Rinpoche, can we come back again tomorrow? He said, yes, please. So we came back the next day. And really, on the way out of the monastery, this student of mine told me about, there's a thing called the Six Disciplines of Naropa, specifically the discipline of Tumo, which is pretty similar to its vase breathing, is breathing into the belly, that Tibetan yogis of a very high level practice. And he told me, and I didn't know anything about this. So I came back the next day with my student and we sat down, and Rinpoche was dressed in full teaching regalia, sitting on a throne chair when I walked into his room. I mean, this man was lying in bed. He looked like he was dying 2 days before. And I said, Rinpoche, can you please talk about the Six Disciplines of Naropa, specifically the discipline of Tumo? He went on for 3 hours talking. The translator said to me, in 13 years of being in this monastery, I have never heard these teachings. He told me that, the translator. He went on for 3 hours and literally gave me an entire Tibetan Buddhist education. It was extraordinary. And he told me something that I will never forget. He said at the end, he said, when he was a young tulku living in Tibet, he said, if he wanted to see his Rinpoche, he would have to wait hours because there were so many lamas that were lined up that had questions to ask about their spiritual life. He said, today I can't find anybody to teach. I mean, it almost brought a tear to my eye. This master, it was turned out to be a Rinpoche that I didn't know who he was, on the level of the Karmapa, the Dalai Lama. It was incredible. And I had no idea. It was Kala Rinpoche. I had no idea who he was. And he told me that. And then I asked him, I said, Rinpoche, do you think I should move back to New York? And he said, you must move back to New York because when you come back to New York, your teachings will be known all over the world. And it's exactly what happened. I moved back to New York, and within a year and a half, I was teaching in South America, Europe, all in the Middle East, all over the place. So, it was an extraordinary experience in my life. And then maybe 10 years later, I was in California, and I was giving a talk at a yoga society there. And one of my students came up to me and he said, Stuart, you got to talk to this guy. You're not going to believe this. So I went up to this man and he was telling me this story, how in 1977, Kala Rinpoche was dying. And these two seekers came from the West, and their spiritual life was so needy and strong, it brought him back to life again. I mean, this thing that happened became a legend in their monastery. It was extraordinary. I never knew this was going to happen. I didn't plan it out. I had no idea who Kala Rinpoche was. I had no idea. But my need for spiritual life was so strong that it brought this about. It made this thing happen. And I saved myself 5 years of living in retreat, learning how to speak Tibetan, painting tankas, doing all that stuff you got to do. And in 3 days, this incredible education that still lives inside me from this great, great master. That's the story of Kala Rinpoche.
Thank you.
And when you have a need for spiritual, all these things start happening. These people come into your life. I mean, I was invited to the Karmapa, He sent me a letter to come visit him in Sikkim, the Karmapa. And I mean, like amazing, I'm not even a Tibetan Buddhist. And when I came to India, I was going to go see him, and it turned out he was very sick in the hospital. And he wound up dying, I think, and I couldn't see him. And then the Shamapa was another one. He was like the Karmapa, who became a friend of mine. And he used to be a client of mine at my antique store, would come in and buy little pieces of art from me and give me American Express traveler's checks, signed the Shamapa. It was really, I got to know all these people, but it was all part of my spiritual evolution, my growth, my need to get teachings, to learn from many different kinds of people. And I met him in Kathmandu once, the Shamapa. Oh, Stuart, you have to come to Sikkim and visit me. You have to come.
The bathroom, Zoe?
Huh? So, I didn't plan to talk about this today, but it's just part of my life. I have a very interesting life. All of these things and people that I've met in my life. But it is simply the need to have a spiritual life that made all of this possible. That brought about all of these situations that really helped me to grow, both humanly and spiritually. Does anyone else have a question they would like to ask?
Stuart?
Yes.
You've often mentioned that as we build a spiritual life, that our sense of time changes. Can you speak more about that, about time and how we use it going from a deeper place?
Well, look, I mean, time is kind of, when you're really working hard inside yourself, minutes become hours, hours become seconds, I mean, time, you can do an amazing amount of stuff when your inner life grows and expands and use the same time consciously, to develop your life, to build your life. I mean, time is kind of an illusion, I mean, when we're not growing inside, time can become our enemy. When we are growing inside, it becomes a friend, because we can use every minute, every second of our lives to keep developing our inner lives and growing. So, I mean, and the whole purpose of all this is to allow our consciousness to get outside the realm of time and space. Because everything within the realm of time and space, I mean, it's all Maya, it's all an illusion. It's transient, it comes, it goes, Does anyone else have a question they would like to ask?
I have also a question, Stuart.
Yes.
During the day, I lost a lot in my mind, voila. And I wonder if it could help, or if you put your attention during the day also on the hara or so, or there's some kind of technique to be reminded at that, or during the day you don't have to be busy with it at all.
Well, the whole purpose of these classes, Paul, is to build your inner life to where your mind stays permanently centered on the hara. That energy gets strong, the chi grows there, and it keeps you permanently centered there. When you lose that centeredness, when you lose that centeredness, you understand, it means that it's just telling you that you got to work that much deeper inside yourself to keep yourself centered there. Because the purpose of this is not to get centered just in the meditation, it's to build a system that allows us to live that way all the time. And then again, you have to, you have to, you have to have patience. Like I have to have patience, that's really the key to this, is having the patience and doing the work and understanding that it's a step-by-step building of a system inside that enables you to do exactly what you're asking about. I mean, it took years for me to learn how to do that, just how to be centered. Okay, does anyone, look, let me just say one other thing, okay? This is very hard for me to do. This requires a lot of depth, a lot of inner work. And please, if you have people that are going to come to the class, about a week ago, some woman started, she had her dog in the class, I mean, you have to understand that you can't have people walking in the background. You can't have people talking, it has to be in a silent place, a quiet place, because when that exists, it disturbs the class. So please try and, that's all I'm asking, is that people come here not to bring their dog, not to sit in a room where there are 3 people walking behind them, that their movement is disrupting the class. Just, understand how important it is to do this inner work, and that you have to be in a place when you do it, which is really quiet and silent, and that you can sit through the class and not move. As I said earlier, when people attend my classes, like in person, people sit for 40 minutes, 50 minutes without moving. They don't get up and leave the room. You understand? Everybody's at home, so all of these things, but you gotta understand that you have to take the time to do the meditation without, things disrupting it, because you're not sitting in a temple or sitting in a meditation class where there's no opportunity to do it. It's really important, because when people do that, it really disrupts the energy of the meditation. And when I spend time talking about Kala Rinpoche, I mean, I have to go very deep inside myself to be able to even talk about things like that, talking about time, and it's not good if this is disrupted by people, in the background walking, or people getting up and leaving, and, so please help me. Help me to do this. I need your help to do this. I can't do this if people are disrupting it all the time. Does anyone else have a question they would like to ask? Okay, if there are no more questions, then there will be a class on Tuesday. I'm looking forward to seeing everybody. God bless you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the questions you ask and for how it forces me to go deep in myself. I really appreciate it. Bless you all. Hopefully I'll see you.
Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you.